as we've mentioned, all of our speakers are Creative Morning alumni. I'm sure many of you are here because you came to the original talks. You are all beautiful, interesting creatives who do all kinds of weird and wonderful things. Just to frame this conversation, I feel like the idea of truth is big and scary and sounds like it's going to be this like no holds barred expose. It is not. It's a safe place. We're going to share what we want. Of course, people are welcome to ask what they want. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to. But yeah, I think should we start with some introductions? So instead of me awkwardly reading your bios while you sit there, maybe we can run through the line and just please introduce yourself and a bit of what you do. Dindsey, starting with you.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. I'm Dindsey. I'm the founder and creative director of Ulo. Ulo is an African textile and lifestyle brand based here. We have the absolute privilege of working with beautiful fabrics. I'm wearing one here that are printed. Some of them are designed by myself. Everything's printed out in Ghana, Tanzania, Nigeria, where I'm originally from. So we make women's wear and lifestyle pieces right here in Melbourne. And we opened up a retail space in May. So post-pandemic, which is a bit crazy and mad, but we're still standing. And it's a real immersive experience because we make all our products on site. And everybody's welcome to come into our workshop as well as the retail store as well. So it's like a really beautiful, loud, vibrant African home. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's us.
Thanks, Dindsey. Over to you, Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin. I do a lot of things, but I'm best known as a professional clothes mender. So I'm author of the book Modern Mending, and I run the online shop modernmending.com. Most of my days are actually spent looking after a baby and a toddler. That is my biggest job right now, so trying to juggle all of that is spicy and interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Many questions to come.
Okay. Hello, my name is Carissa. I'm an artist first and foremost, so I put that into oil painting mainly. And then I also run Studio Ting with my partner Mikey Ting, in which we make furniture and homewares. Mikey's also an artist, so I'll let him do that part of the talking. But basically, we both take our individual art forms and we put them into the studio.
Hello, thank you, colleague. I'm Mikey, and I am an artist, and I am an oil painter, or an enamel painter, and I am one half of Studio Ting. We make furniture and homewares, and we distill our art making into wonderful pieces for the home or the office.
Thank you. So I thought we could kick off. You okay?
Yeah, I need a Britney Spears like 2000s on stage dance mic because I can't dance with this. I'm tethered.
In the Gossip magazine version of this conversation, they're going to be zooming in on the fact that Mikey and Carissa are on separate couches.
Yeah, look at the space between
Drama. It's Studio
Ting. We actually never sit this
Ting.
far apart. It's so weird.
So, okay, so what I thought we could kick off with was I was thinking about, obviously, the theme of truth and like what that means. And it's obviously a huge question, like what is truth, right? And that's not one that I'm here to answer. But I was kind of thinking about it in terms of its opposite. Like well, what is a lie then, right? And there's this idea of like when the story you're telling about reality and reality are not aligned, we see that as dishonest. But the issue with that is obviously that there are as many realities and experiences of reality as there are people. So as much as we kind of like hold this idea of truth up, it's an impossible goal. So I think the first thing is to shift the topic. Thanks for having me, Creative Mornings. We're just going to change the brief. But to shift it to the plural, right, to truths, firstly. And to kind of within that think about the changing nature of truth. And I don't know if you'd be happy to speak about truths that have maybe changed in your lives or careers recently, ideas that you might have had or held to be sacred that you don't anymore. Dindsey, yeah. Get in there. Yeah.
It's a really interesting question because prior to running the business, I was a corporate lawyer working in the world of hedge funds and all the joys of that. So I've obviously had some experience of kind of leaning away from something that doesn't sit well with me, isn't authentic for myself, and isn't the truth of how I want to live and my values. And I think it's really now moving into a business and starting Ulo, I can honestly say that it's wonderful to be in a place where you can talk about your truths and align them with your own values. I think it's incredibly important, more so because I had twins 4 years ago, and I was really passionate about leaving the corporate world and making sure that I was doing something that I could be passionate about and be true about and talk quite openly and honestly. I think when you're in a world where you are putting up a facade and not living your truth, it's really hard, and especially when you go through challenges like becoming a mother or whatever. So for me, it was really important to sort of navigate that and move into something that I was really passionate about, that I could talk about with truth, which is what I do now. So, yeah.
Was it a shift that happened quickly? Or like how, when you made that transition across, like finding that truth, or you use the word authenticity, which is such I feel like I hear that word a lot and I still don't actually know what it means when we speak about it. It can mean so many different things. Like how did you tap back into that?
I think training as a lawyer and doing all of that fun stuff, you were taught to think within a box. Yeah. And I think if you can't stick within the box and you start sort of dabbling outside of the box, you realise that world's perhaps not right for you. So I was sort of designing and creating in the evenings on the weekends. So it's like the typical story where you're sort of living a lie. So you go to work 9 to 5, obviously, because you have to, you've got responsibilities. But I was being quite, I've always been creative, and I was doing that in the evenings. And then I just started to build a community around me outside of the corporate and the legal world, which is really, really, really important. You realise that, you find your people, I guess, or your community. And so you kind of step out of that. And it wasn't a clear cut, okay, I'm going to quit law and go into textile and design. It was a really gradual. And in fact, I quit law 6 weeks before finding out I was pregnant with twins. So that was not good. I don't recommend that. But I think that, it was a really gradual change, and it just felt right. It felt really good. And the first 2 years were obviously juggling life as a new mother, and then juggling life in a pandemic and post-pandemic. So, but it was just a really gradual move that sits really well with me. Yeah. So I think that's what it means to be authentic. And again, talking quite openly and honestly. If I would go to an event like this in the legal world, I would feel very awkward and like I was being quite fake in an audience. So that's that. It was just gradual.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Thank you. And
can I ask questions?
Of course, do it.
Right on. Did you ever feel like you fit into that world? You talk about it like you didn't.
Oh,
it's
the
like,
legal
did you ever
world.
inhabit, like, was there a lawyer Dinsey that was like full on 100%?
No.
Right.
No.
Yeah, interesting.
No.
It's
you
also,
just know. You're like, no.
It's such an interesting
You
contradiction.
You just don't want to sell out right now. Like,
yeah, and you get to actually a stage as you're growing up. Like when you're younger, you just go to university. Well, I did. I went to university, I did law school, carried on. And I'm from an African family, so you're either a lawyer or you're a doctor. Like there's no in between. So, you're trained that way as you're raised. And it got to a point where I didn't feel myself. And I had interest in other places that didn't fall within the corporate world or the world of law and that sort of environment. So, it just kind of,
how interesting.
Yeah, didn't feel
and,
right.
I know Erin is also a mum of 2 under 2. Has that shifted truths for you work-wise? Like in terms of what success means, or?
I don't even think about success anymore, to be honest. It's been very interesting. I can't really talk about the details, but what I can say is that in some ways my life has turned out as a surprise. A lot of this was not planned. That's probably the best way to say it. A lot of it was not planned. And I think it's interesting because I do still get requests from people saying, hey, can you teach a workshop? Hey, can you do this talk? Can you do whatever? And I have to say, I'm really sorry, I can't because I have these other commitments. And so there's like a public-facing version of me, and my website still exists. I have 2 websites. One's the online shop, and one's the All About Erin website. But when people actually get in contact directly, I have to say, this is the situation, and and I do have a baby at home, and he's not in childcare, and I can only do things at these times or at these days. Or, like, for example, this is great for me to be sitting on a panel. This is like the dream, like, woohoo. But quite often I'll get requests for people will say, can you create a completely new presentation? It's completely new material. So I've got to have slides, or I've got to have like a lesson plan, or I've got to have something else. And it's like, it's just not doable. And one of the things that's actually really nice is that I don't care anymore. So I'm like, no, I can't. And I don't feel bad about saying no. And I think I'm finding my responses are more direct, which is kind of funny because I'm American and I'm quite direct anyway. But now I just cut straight to the chase, and I'm honest, but I'm very simple. And I'm like, no, I can't. Here's what I can do, but I can't do this, and I'm out. I think where it gets hard is with the clothes mending. One of the things that I was known for was mending commissions. So people would pay me to mend their clothes, usually artistically. I don't usually do invisible mending for clients. And that was something that I really struggled with before having kids, of going, how do I price this? Because it's not as simple as, I'm going to replace a button, I'm going to put on a patch, I'm going to do a zipper. Usually when people come to me, they have 23 holes and they want it to be Instagram worthy. Not always, but that's usually how they hear about me. It's not like, I don't have a shop front. I don't have something where people are like, knock, knock, can you fix this, whatever. And that does occasionally happen, but usually when they come to me, it's more like, help me open one, you're my only hope. And they get desperate. I actually had someone say to me, I know you're on maternity leave, but I will wait for you and I will pay whatever it takes. And I'm in New Zealand or something, and I'm going to come visit, every couple of months, and I'm going to keep checking in with you. And I'm like, oh my God, Yeah, but it's made it, but it's hard because I'm sure there are people out listening right now who have freelance careers, and maybe whatever you offer, maybe you're really good at pricing it. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're good at pricing some things that you can break down into steps, but maybe there are other things where you're like, I have no idea. And a lot of what I do with the mending side is more exploratory, and I literally don't know how long it's going to take me. So I will guess, and I will say, I think it's going to be this much, and then I end up spending ages on it. So I was actually really happy to say no, like a hard no to the mending commissions, and blame the kids. Because I'm like, whew, that's like one thing I don't have to think about anymore. And stepping off that hamster wheel and having the time to think about it and go, actually, how do I want to do this in future? How can I do this so it's more efficient with my time? Can I have like an intake form? Can I book like how a tattoo artist would do it or something, and like open my books and then go, okay, my books, I'm going to take this many clients for this month and that's it. And then I'm not going to take any more clients for another few months or whatever. So I've had time to actually step away and think, how do I want to do this in future so I can continue it in a way where I can enjoy it. People are still getting the service they want, but it's not something that's like, that's going to like kill me inside. So that was a really long-winded way of saying that things have changed and things have evolved, but it's not all necessarily bad different, that some of it is really good. And I'm like, woo, actually, I'm glad that I have the time to really think about some of those things that I hadn't quite figured out, like what to do about them or how to price them. But this actually brings me to a question for Mikey. Because I know what you do, and I watched your talk. And then I went to one of my favorite cafes, and they're like, with Krista. And then I went to one of my favorite cafes, and they said, oh yes, this beautiful like dessert counter was built by Studio Ting. And I went, oh really? Tyler's Milk Bar. Sorry if I outed you and that was supposed to be a secret project, but I was like, whoa, he does that too? So
Yeah.
I know that the reason I bring this up is because I know that lots of creatives do this, where you have lots of different things that you do, and you don't just have one job, or you don't just have one type of job you accept. And whether it's paid or unpaid, or like a special thing, or like I know the person who designed my logo was like, don't tell anyone I do this because I hate designing logos, but I'll do it for you. So there's that kind of stuff too. And I'm curious about how you do your pricing and how you decide, like, how are there things that you're good at pricing, or are there things that you're not, and how do you decide, like, business-wise from a studio perspective, how do you figure all of that out? Do you just have people that you say no to because it gets too hard?
Yes. And I had nothing to do with that cabinet at Tyler's Milk Bar. Thanks for that. No, just kidding. So, like you, I do the same thing. I do so many things. Fabrication, steelworking, woodworking, designing, we do so much individually, and then we do so much conceptually and design work in the studio as well, as a team. So saying no to people is something that I really struggle with, and it's something that Carissa and I talk about a lot as, like, to help the output of the studio, I have to sometimes say no to the things individually. Just because I can do something doesn't mean I should do something, even though in my body it's so uncomfortable to say no. If it's like, oh, can you fix this bench, or can you make me a table, or can you build the coffin that I'm going to be buried in? It's like, yeah, I can do that. 100% I can do that. Should I do it? I don't have time, but, I'll take it on. It's sort of like a mental thing that I'm trying to unlearn and try and change. Saying no to stuff is very freeing for me, but it's also very fraught with, like, you didn't do the thing, therefore, I don't know, I'm a people pleaser, I guess, at the end of the day. If I can do it, I should do it, right? But that is something that Chris and I talk about a lot. And to go on what Dindsey was saying too, I'll answer your question, sorry. Pricing stuff is a fucking nightmare. That's what it is. Pricing stuff as a fabricator and as a tradesperson is really easy, right? It's like skills acquired, skills learned, time invested in the part. How much does the job take to do? How much does the material cost to fix it? Bing, bang, boom. Here's the invoice, you're done. As an artist, it is so not like that. And you do yourself such a disservice when you try and go, I'm worth this much an hour, because of my old job when I was working in corporate or wherever, I was getting paid whatever. And that means that I shouldn't go over that, because then it's a piss take. But then it's like, I don't know. Carissa and I have learned a lot in the last couple of years as we've taken product through design, concept, prototyping, execution, and then into a retail space. Like, there's so many hard lessons that we learned where it was like, fuck, things have to cost so much more when you involve so many more people, which sounds, it's remedial. Come to this. Yeah, of course you can.
We actually got ourselves into not a bit of trouble, but a situation where
Yes, it's happening. It's what we came for.
with the pricing, because we felt so bad about what we had to charge for a particular item, just purely out of just artist guilt of, like, this shouldn't cost this much. This is not possible. And so we'd made this product, and it took a lot of time to make and really beautiful materials to make, and it was expensive. And we just basically took all of our time out of it so that we could make it an arbitrarily cheaper price. There was literally no rhyme or reason to it.
Not
It's
arbitrarily.
just
Like,
we don't
we don't feel like we deserve to price things
I don't
that
need
high.
to physically pay myself for my time, therefore I can just take that out. And we drove ourselves into the ground trying to make this thing, and it was miserable. And we ended up just scrapping the whole thing and pricing it exactly where it was supposed to be priced. We sold a ton less, like probably 98% less of it. But we weren't killing ourselves to make it, and it didn't suck. And from that point on, I think we learned just price the thing at what it's supposed to be priced, or don't make it, or find a cheaper way to make it if that's the point of the exercise, but just to never ever take from our time, because you'll just chase that tail forever.
Yeah, so as a service, price accordingly. As an artist, price accordingly. Back yourself. Just price it, and that's...
Double
and
it.
that's, triple it. Quadruple it. Quadruple it. Become a lawyer.
Something that is crazy that I discovered this week. So for anyone who's into the arts, the VCA, Victorian College of the Arts, has their final grad show up at the moment. It's up for a week, and I highly recommend you guys check it out. But I was finding out about the pricing because all of the students are selling their work. And the majority of students are selling work at less than what it costs them to frame. Like, it's
That's crazy.
It's
That is-
crazy, and I was sitting with that, and it's like I think there's a big piece that's around like self-worth and creativity, but I also think, and that obviously is true, and that's its own thing to unpack. But I also think that there's part of it that's just like creativity is born out of this exuberance and wanting to share beauty. And I think that also sometimes we shortchange ourselves just because we're so excited about
sure.
making a beautiful thing in the world. And it's like it's the
Like,
impulse
it
that
feels
started
like
you doing it, but like at
It feels
some
like
point,
a privilege to make it.
Yeah,
so it's
and
like,
you
oh, I
want
should just be
someone
happy to
have
make it.
Yeah.
But, also, if you want to continue to make it long term.
Well, exactly.
But I think there's an education piece around that as well, because it's hard to know as a young artist. You do feel so privileged to be able to make what you're making and that people are interested. But then once you enter a more commercial world, and pricing is really important, and it's strategically important as well for your journey as an artist, but there's little to no advice about how to actually price work and not just sort of pluck a number out of the air, but how do you get to that number at the end?
But I think, like, on that note, I would say that it's about education, right? So you have to, like, your community, your customers, your clients, almost open yourself up to show that. So for us, we make every piece that sits in the shop. And the reason we decided to open up a retail store and our studio upstairs and allow people to come in is so that they could see it, see us making, see us creating, and see real people doing it. And as the moment, and we do that a lot through our social media or, on the website, we filmed our textile partners in Nigeria, my hometown, printing, like they print everything by hand, 4-yard pieces. They hang it out to dry. If there's monsoon season, we don't get our fabric because they can't dry it. So we've just finished filming them and it will go up soon. But I'm really passionate about making good quality products like you guys are, all services. And I think you have to show people, you have to show your creativity, show your worth, like every other industry does, whether you're creative or not. It's and people don't know. So when they come in and they go upstairs and they say, you make, and I'm like, yeah, we do. And it changes the dialogue, the narrative, everything changes. The worth, and there are some people that will come that don't get. It's not important to them that we make it, and the price point doesn't sit well with them. But that's when you are true, and you realize you're not for everybody. Not everybody's gonna respect or want your craft, and that's okay. Like that is fine. But it's just I think you have to almost talk about it, show it.
Such a great point.
And it's, you see, I used to feel really dumb about doing it and a bit, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but I thought I was sort of lecturing people, but they're really interested. If they're coming to you or they're buying your product or using your services, they've come to you for a reason. And in this world of social media, like you can watch somebody for ages. We have people that have said, oh, we followed you for 2 years and this is my first time coming in. I'm thinking, well, why didn't you come before? But people they need to soak up what you have to offer, which includes your craft and your creativity.
Do you feel like the product is like almost not irrelevant, but like...
your product doesn't matter. Your product and your service, anybody can do your product. Anybody can make our dress. Anybody can make our pants. They don't come for the product. That for us, it's about the experience. Yeah. So I knew when we opened up the shop, we couldn't just be a retail store. Like anybody can make a colourful pair of pants. It doesn't matter. For us, it's about, Ulo means home in Igbo. That's a dialect I speak, a Nigerian dialect. It's about treating people as guests and inviting them into your home and then giving them the experience. The experience is the African experience, and just sort of sharing that. Part of African tailoring is making yourself. You would go to the market, you choose your fabric, then you go to your tailor and you have it made and you have a say in how it fits you. That's what we're about at Ulo. But it is about, you have to open yourself up. Yeah. and show the bare bones of what
and
you do.
The story of it, it's such a profound point, and it's not something I thought of, but the second you say it, it rings so true. Of course, like we're humans, we love stories. We want to know.
But it takes a long time to tell your story. I would tell a story and pray the sales would come in. You know, it's like, okay, the fabric's from Africa, and we print it, and we make it. Look, we're making. You know, we was trying to do it in like a week's worth of like, I don't know, newsletters or social, like rubbish. And then you have somebody who comes in. They've been watching for like 2 years. I'm thinking, God, why don't you come in like pandemic? Like, hello, but it's just we needed the help.
This is why they didn't want to come in. Getting chewed out for coming in 2 years after the fact.
But it takes time for people to actually listen to your story, soak it up, want to engage with it, and then put money to it. Like, trust that you're going to give them a good service or a good product. It takes time.
Especially when you have like a utilitarian product, like yours or ours, where it's like, oh, a table you sit at and eat at, or a shirt you wear. Yeah. And there's always cheaper versions of...
There's always.
I mean, there's like a million cheaper or more expensive versions. It's like wherever you lie on the spectrum. It's not a reason to... Yeah. There's not a reason to get... I mean, we get so wrapped up sometimes in like, oh, you know, like we're designing something and it's like, how do we imbue that with a sense of artistry and something unique to our situation? And then we get into the materials and the feel and like the look of it. And we can always get a bit too wrapped up in the utilitarian nature of something, where it's like it's just a coffee table, or like it's just a chair, or it's just a... Even with making like paintings, it's like other people can do what you do, but it's like sometimes it's really... I don't know where I'm going with that. Sometimes it comes back to the pricing, and it comes back to what you were saying about your idea of truth. I think what I'm getting at is that any given day for Carissa and I, or for me especially, like it's a moving needle, and sometimes you wake up and you feel like what you're creating isn't relevant or meaningful or necessary. Sometimes you're too wrapped up in what function that piece provides and how other people can facilitate that function in a cheaper or a more expensive way, and that affects how you feel about the piece. And then there are others where you feel, and this is how Carissa and I know we're on the right track, sometimes you wake up and you feel like your way is just the way, and you feel like your truth, or you know, your truth shines out through the piece, and it's like that's the piece. So for us, whenever we feel like that, whenever we feel like, oh, this best represents us because no fucks given, and like this is a good representation of just what we love and how we do it, that's when we know we're onto like the right path. Whereas all the other days, and it's fine, like you have those days where you can't see that path, and it's like, fuck, you know, we're just making a coffee table and it's boring. Like you just put coffees on it and it's so lame. But it's like other days it's like, fuck yeah, this is rad. Like, goddamn table, so boring, look at you. But other days it's like, what we're making is really important and it's a really cool thing that we do. And I don't know, I feel like we're lucky to do it. It's really rad. Yeah.
So I wanted to, thinking about that idea of the visibility of the story behind the creative work, and it makes me think of your mending, Erin. And I don't know who has or hasn't seen Erin's mending. It's incredible, and I'd love you to chat through a bit of it. But something that I've just sort of realized now is I think that maybe part of why we do find it so beautiful, this like very visible mending and making the healing and the kind of recuperation of the garment part of the art, is that is truth-telling in its own sense. Like the material is telling its truth. It's not usually if you try you hide a stain or you hide a tear, you hide a rip, you're sweeping the messiness away. But your work is bringing that to the fore very honestly.
You make it sound more beautiful, it like theoretically than I think. I don't think I would give it that much credit. Like, yes, I would love to say that I have that intent behind all the men's, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just want it to look intentional or better than new or not look terrible. Like I had the most recent thing I put up on Instagram was a stained toddler shirt that had these weird like dot stains all over it that I couldn't get out after tons of soaking, and I tried everything, and then I ended up embroidering over it, and it was like one of the most popular things I put on Instagram. It surprised me because I was like, it's a little toddler shirt. Like I didn't think it was that amazing, like the mend itself, but Sometimes it's about it's about showing people what's possible. That's definitely what I've learned over the past 10 years, that if people don't know something is possible to mend or fix until they actually see someone else doing it. They need to see an example. And so I think part of it was the way that I mended it, but part of it is also about going, oh yeah, that stinky, gross thing that you threw out could actually be really cute without that much effort. It took me, like an hour or two to do it. So there's a few different layers to the story there, with the mending. Sometimes it does have meaning. One of the most meaningful things I ever mended, I mended invisibly because there was so much story in the garment itself. It was a man in his, actually he was in his 90s, I think. And he had a jumper that was knitted by his ex-wife. And it had all these holes in it. And then he later came out as a gay man and had this beautiful long partnership, and then that partner died. And so it was, and they used to mend their clothes together, and it was just this beautiful thing. And so even though he wasn't with the ex-wife and didn't even like her and wasn't identifying with that whole relationship at all, it was like he still loved it enough to wear it. And it was important to him. It's still part of his story. He's not just going to throw it out because of, what happens. And so I thought, I really don't want to be adding visible mending to this. Even though he gave me that option to do it, I thought, no, I'm not going to, I didn't feel right. So sometimes the more sentimental something is, the more I actually want to not necessarily preserve it, but the more I want to keep it as close as possible to how the person remembers it and loves it and try to keep it going in that way for as long as possible. But if I could sidetrack,
Please.
because Dinzy said something that was really interesting to me. And I used to be a journalist. So my former career is journalism, and I was like an editor for a very long time. And I remember thinking of marketing as like the dark side, which is funny because now I run an online shop and I have to write all the copy for the products, and I sell products, on Instagram. And it's like, how do I do that and still be true to myself and be authentic? But the thing I find so interesting, even though storytelling is in my blood and it's what I love, and I'm so glad that I have those skills to be able to draw on for all the other things that I do, it's a lot of work. The storytelling is so much work. And people often complain now about Instagram and how it's changed and the algorithm and how no one's seeing anyone's posts anymore. But the truth is there's also more accounts than ever before. And I'm following probably thousands of accounts. And how much time do I actually spend on Instagram now scrolling? So we're also part of the problem. The more people you get on the platform, the less you're going to see. And everyone's trying to get their point across. And that it's not just Instagram. You've probably, has anyone here got like 20 different Black Friday emails in their inbox? I'm like, delete, delete, delete. So we're all competing for attention, but also the expectations are higher. So I know in my case, if I don't take a before photo of something before I mend it, it's like, especially if I'm going to do invisible mending, there is no story there. I can tell you I mended it, but you just have to trust me, and especially if I'm really good at it, then you're never going to know. It just looks totally fake, like I totally faked it, right? So that's an extra requirement to my workload that I have to make sure that I carve out some nap time where both kids are in bed at the same time and I magically have good light and I remember to not be exhausted and to go in and to take the before photos of everything that needs before photos, like before I can even mend. So I can't just take advantage of that, the small pockets of time I get and just mend something. I can't. Yes, I can. When I say I can't, I can. But I have noticed that if I don't take a before photo and if I don't take a beautiful before photo, it's not the same. It's not going to get the same reaction. It's not going to get the same traction. It's not going to inspire as many people to mend stuff themselves. So there's all those kind of things that are kind of packed into what I have to do. And even though I love the storytelling, there is something freeing about me just going, nope, I'm just not going to do it. So yes, I have an online shop, but I rarely send out newsletters, even though I would advise other people in a professional capacity how to do that or even write them for them.
MailChimp.
Yeah. Or
Thanks for sponsoring us.
you know, I've written social media posts as part of my work before working in marketing and stuff. And now I'm like, do I even manage to get one thing on Instagram? You know, and so I know what I should be doing. I'm doing finger quotes right there for those who are listening. But it's just not possible. And I think also I've noticed, and I read an article about this recently, about someone who posted recipes online. He's a cookbook author. And it's this really fascinating article. Every time he was just trying to post pictures of what he had for lunch, you know, just to get some kind of content out there and also to like push himself creatively to just do something regularly. But every time he would just post a picture of his lunch, he would get comments saying, "What's the recipe? What's the recipe?" And I think it's an interesting idea to go, what do we expect of others to give us for free? And if everyone is expected to have social media accounts or to be promoting themselves, you know, and they're expected to tell all these stories and go behind the scenes and share reels of like what they're doing and all of that, the expectations get higher. And what we expect from people for free, someone could be following Dinsy's Instagram account for 2 years and not actually buy something. And that's a lesson I learned a long time ago, you know? So I'm not saying you have to buy stuff from people you follow or that you have to spend more time on social media, but I think it's an interesting thing to go, what do we expect from small businesses now? All that energy does not necessarily translate to a sustainable business model.
Yeah. I have so many points to follow up and ask you about that. But before we do, and I also want to be mindful of time and open it up if there are any questions. Also, I know it's really scary asking questions in forums like this. It's always disproportionately scary and your heart races, but this is a very safe space. So please cook up a question and we'll open the floor after this next point. But I wanted to jump to you, Carissa, and speak to you about this idea so you've got these kind of parallel careers happening where one half of Studio Ting and you guys make this incredible furniture and homeware and very slick, creative and unusual, beautiful luxury objects. And that's the one half of your practice. But in your alter ego, you are a painter. You make incredible oil paintings. You're represented by galleries in Sydney. And yeah, anyone who hasn't seen Chris's painting, it's incredible. So this idea of thinking about how people connect with story and how so much of when we buy something, and I don't even mean financially buy something, I just mean when we spend attention with something, when we choose to invest our time and attention into something, the difference that it makes to know the human behind it, the stories behind it, the values that have gone into making it. How does that work within your fine art practice? Because people are seeing these works and there's these, you know, they're kind of resolved and finished images on a beautiful white cube gallery wall. That's such a controlled way to experience the work, which is obviously just the end of a long process. Like, how do you connect people with your processes?
I think I typically haven't done that very well because my tendency is to the kind of the way the commercial side of my painting works is that essentially I have a solo show once a year. Once that wraps up, I'm starting on the next one, and it's just kind of this thing that goes around, and you just sort of have all this work, and you go for the opening night, and then it's all there, as you say, like it's, you know, this end product, and then I just go back and hide away and make the next bunch of work. And I think I'm trying to get out of that tendency to just sort of hide away and make the work. I do a lot of writing about my process and about the concept. And in my ideal world, I provide that writing. And it's like, here's everything that goes with the show. But they're not going to sit there and read this, like, you know, 20-page gibberish scrawlings of a mad woman out to people who come through the door. So like, they'll take a few things from it and then they'll put this beautiful thing together about the show. But I think what I'm trying to do is get better at the sharing of it, and that I think whenever I'm being a little bit more honest about where things come from, or not waiting until I have it completely resolved, I can sort of moved through communicating more openly, which has, I guess, been a bit of a struggle for me, especially when it comes to making paintings. And this kind of, I don't know if it's like a childhood embarrassment where I feel like sometimes when I'm at my shows, it's, it's like, oh, Carissa did this painting. I feel like a kid whose mum's got you by the arm. It's like, look at the painting Carissa did. I'm like, oh, it's all right. Like, I just made it. There's nothing behind it. I just made it, which is not true at all. So, yeah, I think I'm still working that out. And each time, that comes around, I'm trying to work out how to be more honest and more consistently communicative about the show, and to sort of bring people through, especially over the last couple of years, because I wasn't able to be at any of my openings because they were in Sydney. So, it was just sort of reliant on passing the information to someone else and then hoping that they would communicate it the way I wanted.
Which is an interesting exercise in itself. It's always quite interesting hearing how someone else describes what you do.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? Wait, what?
Cool, but not at all, but very cool.
Yeah, it can be quite generative. I think to your point about the art exhibition thing, I always think it's so funny. When I was at art school, our art school was right next to the theatre school. So you always had the art kids and the theatre kids like mingling in the cafe together. And all the theatre kids are like, look at me. And all the art kids are like, look at me. No, look away. No, look
Please
at me.
don't
No,
look.
look away. And it's like that
Just look at this.
tension between making something that you want so badly to share, and then the second people are looking at it, you're like, oh God, I don't know, this is so weird.
Yeah. The funny thing is as well, it's like recently I had a conversation with my gallery owner, and where I was talking about things that I wanted to do, and it was kind of, she was sort of like, I didn't even really know that, one, you wanted to do those things, or that you were making work that would kind of go along with that. And it made me realize how little I share sometimes. So I think, the benefit of sharing, not just on social media as well, just like sharing in person with the people that are around you is so important to continuing to make your work.
Yeah. Perfect segue.
Answer the
Thank
question.
you.
Sorry.
Yes, absolutely you did. And it was
left
a
my
perfect
body for a
segue. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? Can be anything. Yeah. Do we have a mic? Can you?
Come up.
Oh.
Where do I go?
I guess just consummate professionals. Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I just got a quick one. In line with the theme, is there any time you had to tell a lie to become the truth that you wanted to become, but when you were saying it, you actually weren't that yet? For instance, the moment where you said, I'm an artist, and then you had to hopefully become that artist.
That is such a great question. Thank you so much. I feel like Mikey Ting.
I think there's a lot of in what we do as well. As the stakes get higher, and basically the budget, as the budget gets higher for a fit out, there's a lot of yes. There's a lot of I can do that.
Yeah.
And just quietly shitting yourself. But do we openly lie? Yes. Yes, 100%.
But if you make good on it, it's like you're telling a future truth.
And also as artists, because we're a future truth. That sounds like a liar. That's a liar getting out of something.
Don't trust me on anything. Yeah.
I didn't do that. It was a future truth. I feel like as artists, we can bend the rules a little bit in our favour because we work in interiors and design and things that are a bit more stoic in their definitions. I think because we are artists, that's sort of our niche and also our superpower. If someone has an interiors budget, a job, and we give them a concept and we have a bit more of a budget, the stakes are way higher. It's easy for us to say yes and sort of lie through our teeth. It's not really like a bald-faced lie. It's kind of like we don't know how it's going to go, but we'll do our best.
Yes.
And there's so much artistic license that we get to take just because we're who we are. So we're quite free in that respect. But we have a job this week where it's we don't know what the outcome's going to be like because it's a material we've never worked with. We're doing something that is totally organic, and it's sort of a process that we're sort of inventing as we do it. But it's we haven't had the time to go from learning through to execution. The job is the continuum. So it's kind of had to lie a little bit, but also it'll be fucking rad when we execute
Yeah.
on it, because
Yeah.
we will. And whatever that looks like when we do,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
You remember when you were making the Tyler's cabinet that you mentioned? Remember when you lied? Get my book out. The Tyler's cabinet, and Mikey picked it up, and he had it in. It was like 2 hours after he started working on it. It was all in pieces, and there was shit everywhere. And I was like, man, I would be shitting myself. I said to him, I'd be shitting myself right now if I had that cabinet, because it was talking about how much it meant to them, and they didn't want to get a new one because it was like really special to them. And then I'm just looking at it all in pieces, and I was just like, I'd be shitting myself. And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh, sorry, you are. Anyway, but I think it was one of those situations where they were like, can you fix this cabinet? Yeah, I can fix that cabinet.
Yeah, fucked up.
Oh, yeah. I know, but you fixed the cabinet in the end. But it was, you didn't let anyone see that there was any trepidation, whereas I would have been white as a ghost.
Because I can't come into the studio, so it's like you just work behind a closed door and you're just sweating and like
Yeah,
swearing.
yeah.
But then at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, I did that. No big deal. No, but the cabinet's interesting because I was just realizing that you're talking about like mending clothes with artistry. That cabinet was like, for reference, the cabinet is like an old Art Deco glass cabinet that they display their sandwiches in. And it was given to them, and it's had a tremendous story, and it's been like in the reservoir for ages. It got handed down to them from a business to them. So they're very like, oh, it just doesn't really suit us, but we don't want to get rid of it. So can you fix it? Because it was a bit broken. But then it was like, can you resize it? Can you reshape it and make it like a whole new fucking cabinet?
Right,
and it's like, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, correct.
And then the cakes will come out from the centre.
But so the end of the job, and it was so true. Like Carissa described it. Like I started pulling it apart, and I was like, like this thing is built in a different time, in a different way that I'm familiar with. But like as I pulled the puzzle piece apart, I was like, oh no, this is like such a big job. And I also felt like a little bit like it was lucky that I had pulled it apart because I had all the skills to put it back together. But they were such disparate skills because there was like copper pieces, and I had to weld the copper, and then I had to like do some woodworking and match a stain, and then like glass cut, I had to do some glazing on it, and it was just like a whole thing. I had to upholster the thing. It was like a YouTube maker's sort of like tutorial, sort of like 5-part. I should have filmed it. Fuck. So anyway, what I was getting at is we mend things, right? You're mending it with artistry, and in that respect, I usually do as well. With my painting, I take found art, and then I mend it, and I put my own spin on it. But it's very like, I don't take a before shot because I don't really want people to see the before shot. That's not really part of the story. But in that case, in the cabinet, I needed to make sure that it was invisible and for there to be no artistry. And that was such an interesting thing in my brain as I was doing it. I was like so proud that I was making it look so legit and so untouched. And then I was like, no one's going to fucking know, and it's going to eat me alive every time I look at the cabinet.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there are any graphic designers or designers here, like that is the true, that's the rub with that. Like the better at design you are, the more often invisible it is. It's just the feeling.
I don't do that. Don't ask me.
So we've got a couple of minutes left. I want to be mindful of the time because everyone's got days to get to. Is there a final question? Is anyone brave enough to come and ask a closing question? Yes.
I've got a loud voice.
Whoa.
Oh, can we get you on the mic for the pod?
This is a question for Carissa. How does your approach and your creative process differ between your artist practice and your studio practice? And if it is different?
Yeah, not as much as I thought it would when we started the studio. I thought they would be really kind of separate things and separate trains of thought, and I'd have to jump between. But the more that we go through it, I still approach the studio designs with the same kind of conceptual framework as my arts or my fine arts practice, which I think is what is something that we bring to the studio. And just to the sort of design and interior space that is different for us is that we approach everything first and foremost as artists, and then the kind of real world practical sense of it's a table, it has to be able to hold things, make some adjustments, happens. But for me, I think the thinking about, or the way that I think as an artist is central to kind of everything that I touch. So there's really no separating it. And it's kind of an ongoing, constant thing. And I'll find sometimes if I'm like, for instance, I'm starting to think about the big concept that will really govern all of my work next year, and that will be the focus of my my main solo show, and that will more than likely bleed into the studio as well, just because that's such an overarching focus for me next year in the way I'm thinking and the materials I want to use and how I want to communicate the concept, that some of it's just not going to work in a painting sense. So there's an opportunity to bring it into the studio.
Oh, thank you. It's a beautiful note to end on. Just, can we have a round of applause for our panelists, please? Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for your time. You've all got a million things going on. It's why you make interesting things, and it's why we are so interested to hear from you. So thank you for carving out the time and being so generous. I wish we had longer, but we don't.
All day. Can I just say, amazing job, Alice. That was incredible.
I'm
you did
terrified.
10 minutes into it. I was like, Alice, easy.
Thank you.
Incredible. You nailed it.
It
so
felt
awesome.
like last night I was trying to explain it to someone, and I was like, it's like being in the car on the highway, and then the driver has a heart attack, and now I've got to drive the car. And he was like, a bit dramatic.
Is it like that?
But it's been so much fun, and I think there's something that's just so, this audience self-selects for already a very warm and interesting crowd. Like, it takes a lot of extra effort to start your day at 7:30 to get here. So I hope the rest of your Fridays are interesting, and I hope that there was little nuggets of gold in this for each and every one of you. I'm sure there was. And that's it. I reckon we're done. Maybe we'll just run through the panelists really quickly, and if you could just direct us to wherever you want us to go, whether it's your store, online, or in brick, or where do we find you guys? Go for it.
Marketing on socials. That's really the only way you can get in touch with me for the for my painting. For the studio, socials, website, studio-ting.com. We're currently going to have a rebrand, which is a whole thing that we haven't told anyone. So that's going to be a whole lot of work. But at the moment, it's studio-ting.com, and get in touch if you want any beautiful commissions, or if you have any ideas for interiors, or if you want to badger us on email.
Yeah. And aside from that, just my name, Carissa Karamarko.
Yeah, I've got modernmending.com. That's my online shop. You can also find me on Instagram as @modernmending or @Lewis-Fitzgerald. That's usually where I put the mending stuff if you're interested in that. And I also have a Facebook group called Modern Mending Club, which is the largest mending group on Facebook, and we've got more than 13,000 menders from around the world. So if you're going to come talk to me afterwards about the holes in your pants, you might just want to post pictures in there, and then you can get answers from other people around the world.
That's the voice of experience speaking.
You can find us at, where are we? Socials at Ulo Australia, our shop and studio at 71 Burwood Road in Hawthorne. Come and look and just watch and listen to some really cool African music. And on Wednesdays, we do have African snacks in the evening.
We're all coming.
Come.
All of us.
It's fun. It's really good. And where else? Yeah, that's it. uloaustralia.com website.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the Creative Mornings teams. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.